All right, let's get into it. We're about to trace the story of what might be humanity's single greatest invention. And no, it's not fire, and it's not the wheel. It's that invisible, almost magical technology that allows one mind to speak directly into another, even across time and space. We're talking about language.
For billions of years, our planet was full of sound, but you have to imagine, it was a world of, well, a profound emotional silence. This quote just gets right to the heart of it. The universe was humming with instinct, but not with shared experience, not with memory, and definitely not with love. Not in the way we know it, not yet. So let's really go back. I want you to picture the world millions of years ago. It's this symphony of noise, right? The roar of a predator, the crack of lightning, but it's all just noise. There's no shared meaning behind any of it. Now, early human communication was good enough for immediate survival, but it had this huge limitation. It was totally trapped in the present moment. A hunter could, point to an antelope. He could mimic a lion to signal danger, but what he couldn't do was tell his tribe about the one that got away last week or plan a really complex strategy for tomorrow's hunt. Everything was stuck right here, right now.
So what changed? Well, before we could install the software of language, we needed a serious hardware upgrade, and this came through some pretty radical changes to our own biology.
This is fascinating. Our bodies made this incredibly dangerous compromise. Over time, the human larynx, our voice box, dropped lower in the throat. You can see the difference here. This created a resonant chamber that let us make these rich vowel sounds, the ahs, ees, and oos that are the building blocks of speech. But the trade-off, it was huge. We became the only primates that can actually choke to death on our food. Evolution literally bet our lives on the power of being able to talk.
And the last piece of the hardware puzzle was genetic. A key mutation in what's called the FOXP2 gene essentially rewired our brains. It gave us the incredibly precise motor control we need to shape our breath into all those distinct sounds. So, with the larynx dropped and the brain rewired, the hardware was finally installed.
Okay, so now it was time for the software update. This happened during what's called the cognitive revolution, and this is where simple animal calls truly transformed into what we'd recognize as human language.
So, the absolute game changer is this concept, displacement. This is the real magic trick of human language. Think about it. A dog can bark at a visitor at the door right now, but it can't bark about the visitor who came yesterday. Displacement freed us from the tyranny of the now. Suddenly, we could talk about the past, we could plan for the future, and we could even discuss things that aren't even real.
And here's how we do it. It's brilliant. We start with just a limited number of sounds, right? But then we add this secret ingredient: syntax, grammar. These are the rules that let us combine those finite sounds into a limitless, infinite number of unique, meaningful sentences. It's like a creative Lego set for your mind.
But why did we even need this upgrade? Well, as our tribes got bigger, picking bugs off of each other one-on-one like other primates just wasn't practical anymore. So language evolved as a kind of vocal grooming. We used gossip to keep track of who to trust and who to avoid. And, most importantly, it allowed us to create and believe in these shared fictions, things like myths, gods, laws, even nations, that let us cooperate on a massive, massive scale.
Language had a fatal flaw, though. It was tied to breath. The moment a word was spoken, poof, it vanished forever. Every time an elder died, it was like an entire library burned to the ground. Humanity desperately needed a way to defeat time itself.
And this was the central challenge. I mean, it's one thing to draw a picture of a sheep to mean sheep. That's easy. But how do you draw a picture of an idea? How do you make a permanent record of something that doesn't physically exist, something like belief or love?
The great leap forward was something called the rebus principle. Scribes in ancient Sumeria had this genius idea. A picture could represent the sound of its name, not just the object itself. All of a sudden, you could spell out abstract concepts. You combined a picture of a bee with a picture of a leaf, and you could write the word belief. This one simple, brilliant hack unlocked the ability to write down thought itself.
From there, the technology of writing just got more and more efficient. Early systems like cuneiform, you had to learn thousands of symbols. But then, these seafaring traders, the Phoenicians, they created the ultimate hack, an alphabet. Just 22 symbols for sounds, which you could combine to make any word. The Greeks later added vowels, and boom, the modern alphabet was born, and it basically democratized knowledge for everyone.
So, language was born, and then it was written down.
But it was never static, not for a second. It was constantly being shaped and crushed and remixed by these great machines of history, empires, invasions, and new technologies.
Okay, this is one of my favorite examples in English. After the Norman conquest of 1066, a class divide was baked right into our vocabulary. The Anglo-Saxon peasants, they worked in the fields with the animals, so we have their Germanic words cow, pig, sheep. But the French-speaking lords, they ate the meat at the dinner table, so we use their words for the food: beef, pork, mutton. A 1,000-year-old power dynamic is sitting right there on your dinner plate. Wild, right?
Then along came a machine that froze language right in its tracks, the printing press. Before print, people just spelled words however they sounded. But printers, they needed consistency. And unfortunately for us English speakers, they standardized spelling right as pronunciation was going through this massive change. People stopped saying the ka sound in night, for example, but the spelling was already locked in. So our spelling is basically a ghost of how people spoke 500 years ago.
Which, of course, brings us to today. The internet has gathered all of humanity back around this single, massive digital campfire. And you know what? It's changing language faster than ever before.
People love to panic that texting is ruining language. But linguists see something totally different. They don't see it as writing, they call it fingered speech. It's language returning to that rapid, informal, conversational flow of just talking. And emojis? They're just modern-day hieroglyphs, adding back all the emotional tone that plain text can't convey.
But this hyper-connected world has a deeply tragic side. While we're all innovating with digital slang, we are living through a period of linguistic mass extinction. On average, one of the world's 7,000 languages dies every 2 weeks.
And this is just a profound loss. Because when a language vanishes, we don't just lose a bunch of words. We lose an entire way of seeing the world, a distinct method of categorizing reality. We lose a completely irreplaceable map of the human mind. So what's next? Well, we're teaching machines to speak with these large language models that can mimic our syntax with kind of eerie accuracy. Real-time translators are promising to finally break down those ancient barriers between cultures. The technology will keep changing, but that fundamental human driver, that deep, deep need to connect, that will always be there.
Ultimately, this is the whole point of it all. From the very first grunt to the latest AI, language is the tool we invented to cure our fundamental loneliness, to bridge that terrifyingly silent gap between one consciousness and another.
At the end of the day, we are the talking apes. It is our superpower. The story is still being written, and every single conversation we have is another sentence in the book of humanity. So the only real question left is, how will you use your voice?
Please like and subscribe.